Origin just wants to reaction. This is how Yemen is wrecking the entire global economy. That's a real life lore. Guessing this is the Houthis things. Yeah, I expect a real life lore video usually whenever some real world conflict happens. Since these videos are documentary level big one, it usually takes a long time. This is a surprise that it came out this fast. I mean, I would have expected this like multiple weeks later or something. But yeah, there you go. And it's 40 minutes. It's like his videos were starting to get like in our area, so it's like 37 minutes is like still decent enough size that it's not too big, I guess. Yeah, so this recent thing that has been going on about, I'm guessing there is a root about like Israel-Palestine thing, Iran backing it. Obviously, like everybody has their own agenda who is involved. But yeah, there's also help from Iran and things like that, right? Houthis are doing their own thing. Like they've been attacking ships for years now. Yeah, this Israel-Palestine thing just gave reason, Iran to like fund Houthis now, so they can do it better. So U.S. And U.K. I think launched the strikes on them, right? As far as yeah, they launched the strikes, and then there was like some kind of like a response to that as well, that they try to attack U.S. ship or something. But I'm not really following that, like what's happening there exactly. But it's like somewhat escalating, something like that. There were like rallies in Yemen as well, if I remember correctly, where they like like usual thing basically. So I don't know. It's gonna be interesting watching real life lore videos. So let's watch it. Remember, if you like my Rick Sunday, subscribe. So I know which type of videos to react to more. Check out the Rick Sunday. There's a link in the decision. Check out the end card, I guess. And yeah, let's watch it.
As the world's attention is still largely focused on the brutal war being waged in Gaza that's already claimed the lives of tens of thousands of people, something else is happening nearby to the south in the Red Sea that has the potential to escalate the war between Israel and Hamas into a greater Middle East-wide conflict that's already severely affecting the entire global economy. You see, after Israel initiated its full-scale invasion of Gaza, the Houthis, a Shia Muslim military organization in Yemen that's funded and armed by Iran, declared their full, unwavering support for Hamas and the Palestinian cause against Israel. But, geographically located about 1,600 kilometers away from Israeli territory and more than 1,800 kilometers away from the main fight going on in Gaza, the Houthis were incapable of participating in the war happening around Gaza directly. And so they decided to begin intervening on the side of Hamas more indirectly. In November of 2023, the Houthis declared that they would begin attacking every single ship they could find sailing nearby to their territory in the Red Sea that was linked in any way to Israel, including any ships traveling to or from Israeli ports, any ship with Israeli ownership, any ship flying an Israeli flag, or any ship with
it was more than just Israeli ship.
An Israeli crew. And then, they further stated that these attacks on Israeli shipping would continue indefinitely until Israel fully withdrew from Gaza and ended its war against Hamas. But there was a slight problem with the Houthis' plan. You see, the ownership structure of the globalized 21st century merchant shipping fleet is a very complicated business. Merchant ships very often travel between origin and destination in different countries. The ownership structure of the ship itself is often divided between multiple different nationalities that may have nothing to do with where the ship's origin or destination is. The flag of call that the ship flies may be completely different altogether, while the crew that's operating the ship may be of completely different nationalities from everything else as well. Determining which merchant ships operating on the world's oceans are considered Israeli or not is not as simple a task as it appears at first. But that didn't dissuade the Houthis from deciding to intervene anyway by attacking whatever ships they determined were Israeli. Their attacks began on the 19th of November 2023, with a brazen hijacking of an empty car carrier sailing through the Red Sea that was traveling from Turkey to India. The Houthis raided the ship with a helicopter that transported a heavily armed Special Forces squad onto the ship's deck, who quickly managed to subdue the ship's crew and rerouted it back to the Houthi-controlled.
I think there's like, okay, West is with Israel. I think the more pissed off thing about they might have, and this is just me guessing, is India's support for Israel as well. Like, okay, Indians are doing this as well. I don't know, like, is it a coincidence that they specifically like attacked this ship that was going to India, right? Even though India is not part of that coalition or the grid, they're still there, right, trying to defend the ships or something. So I don't know.
Port of Hodeidah in western Yemen. The ship was called the Galaxy Leader, and its registered owner was a company known as Galaxy Maritime Limited that's based in the Isle of Man, a UK dependency. The ship was being chartered by a Japanese company, its flag of call was based in the Bahamas, and its 25 crew members hailed from the Philippines, Romania, Bulgaria, Ukraine, and Mexico. The only connection that the ship had to Israel was that the company that owned the ship, Galaxy Maritime Limited, was further owned by another company known as Ray Car Carriers, which is a business that's co-owned by a well-known Israeli businessman and billionaire named Abraham Ungar, who has a current net worth of approximately 3.25 billion US dollars. Based on that, the Houthis decided that the ship was fair game to attack and hijack, and it would be far from the last. In the weeks and months that have followed after that initial attack, the Houthis have unleashed a torrent of hundreds of missiles and drones and launched further hijacking attempts against dozens of merchant ships caught sailing through the Red Sea. Merchant ships that have been linked to dozens of countries from all around the world. And the missiles, drones, experience, and intelligence that they've received to launch all of these attacks have largely all come from a single source. Their biggest patron, the Islamic Republic of Iran. Iran has spent years carefully cultivating the Houthis from a ragtag group of
Yeah, so Iran has learned its lesson in the past, like attacking US Navy is not the way to go, so I guess we're going to arm somebody else to attack it, right? Because eventually US Navy is going to get involved, and there you go, at least we are in the distance. See, I don't understand this, like everybody's like trying to like pressure Israel to back away from Gaza. Now, I understand that. That's not the point. The point is, why did Hamas attack and then just like is now in a defense mode? Did they see that coming? They must have seen that coming. So what was the point of attack? Because first time they attacked and started this, since then they've been in defensive mode. The issue is Israel is now basically, attacking like Gaza Strip. So all they did is like poke the line trying to kill them, and they're just basically trying to like hide it somewhere. That's what's happening. Why did you poke the line? Right? Because there is no back and forth. It's just like they attack Israel, now Israel in full force now with the support of all of the other countries. It's like, invading Gaza Strip. All the innocent are getting caught in the middle of this. Like, is that what they wanted? Is that what they wanted? Like this kind of like a scenario that happens that sparks enough rage that it continues more wars in the future, skirmishes in the future, more unrest. Is that what they wanted? Because I don't know, man.
Militia into a legitimately dangerous state-like military force, with a massive arsenal of guided anti-ship missiles and swarms of cheap explosive kamikaze drones that they can use to overwhelm maritime anti-air defenses with through sheer numbers. Backed by Iran, the Houthis have arguably become the most dangerous and heavily armed piracy force in modern history. And unlike the pirates before them, they used to launch out from Somalia and raided commercial shipping in the Arabian Sea, the Houthi pirates control a significantly more advantageous geography to wreck the global economy from. They currently dominate the northwestern third of Yemen's territory, including most of Yemen's population and most of Yemen's coastline along the Red Sea, which gives them direct access to launching hijacking ships, missiles, and drones into one of the world's most critical arteries of globalized trade. The Red Sea itself can be thought of as the primary maritime passageway between Asia and Europe, and the passageway is bounded by two narrow gates on either side of it that regulate access through it. The Bab el-Mandeb Strait in the south between Yemen and Djibouti, and the Suez Canal in the north that runs across Egypt. The route between these gates across the Red Sea is a part of the shortest possible geographic route for merchant ships to take traveling between Asia and Europe. And so it's the preferred route of choice for container ships carrying manufactured goods and raw materials from places like China, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and India to take when transporting their goods to the huge European consumer market. And from another perspective, this trade route is also a major artery for the flow of global energy resources from origin to consumer, like oil and gas from places like Russia, Kazakhstan, and Azerbaijan towards Asia in one direction, and oil and gas around the Persian Gulf towards Europe in another direction. As a result, roughly 12% of the entire world's trade volume usually flows through the Red Sea on an annual basis, which includes nearly a third of the entire world's container ship traffic, roughly 10% of the world's seaborne oil, and roughly 8% of all the world's LNG. An average of 50 merchant vessels usually transit through the Suez Canal on a daily basis, and this overall makes the Suez Canal and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait the second most critical maritime choke point for globalized trade anywhere in the world, remaining only behind the Singapore Strait in Southeast Asia in overall importance. And all of this massive volume of trade and energy that usually flows through the Red Sea makes its overall security and stability an extremely important core interest for dozens of countries and actors from all around the world. To Russia, the Red Sea is still its most vital artery for exporting their own crude oil and LNG resources by sea towards their new primary consumers, China.
All of that. And Russia with siding with Hamas and Iran. So what is the answer to this? I'm guessing like Russian ships are not getting attacked or whatever ship that has like anything to do with Russian goods are not gonna get attacked, because otherwise it's like you're just like angering your own ally. Russia is with Iran, right? So this would like piss off Russia. Like, why would you doing this?
And India, while Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan rely on the route to a lesser extent for their own oil exports as well. From China's perspective, the Red Sea is its most vital artery to receive energy resources from Russia through, and to transport their own manufactured products to the European consumer market through, which is of similar concern to Japan, and largely why both China and Japan maintain overseas military bases in Djibouti nearby to help safeguard their own trade routes. To Qatar, the Red Sea is its primary trade route to export their LNG supplies to Europe, while to Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Kuwait, and Iraq, the Red Sea is their primary trade route to export their crude oil to Europe through. To the European Union, the Red Sea is their primary trade route for receiving manufactured goods from Asia and energy resources from the Persian Gulf through. While to the United States, Washington wants to ensure the continuous flow of maritime trade through the Red Sea to keep the global economy and globalized system that it champions and protects humming along. And Egypt, as the controller of the Suez Canal that regulates all of this trade, stands to arguably benefit the most when the trade is running smoothly, and lose out the most when the trade isn't running smoothly. Egypt's Suez Canal Authority is the guardian of the canal, and they charge various fees and tolls on every ship that passes through it, as ships usually have no other alternative.
Like all the people from Gaza who's running away, aren't they running away into Egypt? Now, if like Houthis do that by for like, okay, you need to stop attacking Gaza and do this, basically affecting Egypt's economy, making Egypt angry, won't that make like, okay, all the Palestinian that escape into Egypt will be more pissed off now because it's like affecting them? I don't know, many elements are play here. Like, I don't know, are they thinking all these elements right now?
The only other possible geographic choice the ships can take to travel between Asia and Europe is the much longer way all the way around the entire African continent, around the Cape of Good Hope. A route that usually adds anywhere between 7 and 10 days of travel time and significantly higher cost for ships to take. Under normal circumstances, the tolls and fees that Egypt charges on
all of them. What? Only 7 and 10 days? What you talking about? Isn't that supposed to be an even longer time? Like, those ships are hauling ass, man. I thought it would like be, like on ships, especially cargo ships, probably would be slower passing all those days. Like, I thought it would like take like way too long time to like pass. It's a few days, that's like nothing, right? I mean, okay, I know it's like global economy, 7 days might be way too long. I don't know, just like, I don't know, I'm stupid, maybe I never thought of this, but it's just like a month to travel that distance. I would have thought like 2-3 months or something, I don't know. Because I hear about those like whatever that boat thing people go on to, like I even forget the name, like fucking pills and things. Yeah, painkillers sometimes like affect my memory, just like it's there but I can't remember the name, right? So whenever all these people go to like whatever on boat trips and things like that, that takes multiple months. But I'm guessing like they're trying to enjoy their time rather than trying to get from A to B. That's the thing.
Ships passing through the Suez Canal are still much cheaper than the alternative of sailing around the whole of Africa. And it's also usually one of the Egyptian government's largest sources of revenue. As the world began recovering from the logistical supply chain bottlenecks that were caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, an all-time high record number of ships passed through the Suez Canal during the fiscal year between June of 2022 and June of 2023. 25,887 ships took the journey, which also netted Egypt an all-time high annual revenue from the Suez Canal, about $9.4 billion US dollars, about enough to help fund 10% of the entire Egyptian government's operating budget. And this is all in addition to the fact that many countries can only import their goods from abroad through the Red Sea. The only maritime ports that Jordan, Sudan, and Eritrea have are all just located on the Red Sea, while Djibouti's port nearby to the Red Sea on the Gulf of Aden currently supports roughly 95% of landlocked Ethiopia's trade volume. And so, the safe, secure, and reliable flow of trade continuing through the Red Sea is extremely important to all of these dozens of countries from all around the world, both near and far from it. But unfortunately, the Red Sea has always existed within one of the most geopolitically turbulent regions in the world, and ships are also at their most vulnerable when transiting through either side of the narrow gates on either end of it. Both the Suez Canal in the north and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait in the south can be blockaded intentionally or even accidentally, and when they are, the Red Sea passageway for global trade comes to a complete halt. This has happened twice before in fairly recent history. Once for a long period of 8 years when the entire Suez Canal in the north was shut down between 1967 and 1975. During the Arab-Israeli Wars, after Israel secured control over the entire Sinai Peninsula, and in the process, the Suez Canal itself became an active frontline war zone dividing Egyptian and Israeli zones of control for those 8 years until Israel agreed to return the Sinai Peninsula back to Egypt. And another much shorter time when the canal became closed once again much more recently and much more memed about in 2021, when a container ship known as the Ever Given got blinded during a sandstorm when transiting through the Suez Canal and crashed, blocking the canal's entire width. For 6 days and 7 hours, the ship blocked all passage through the Suez Canal like a cork stuck in a bottle, and dramatically slowed down trade between Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. Hundreds of trade ships carrying nearly $10 billion worth of goods became bottlenecked. Many ships decided to give up and rerouted the long way around Africa, and once it was freed, the Egyptian government initially demanded more than $1 billion in compensation from the Ever Given's owners. And then on the other side of the Red Sea, the Bab el-Mandeb Strait is merely 23 kilometers wide at its narrowest point, and so it basically functions more like a two-lane highway for merchant ships, with one highway running south and the other running north. A single ship can't really get stuck and block the strait in the same kind of way that it can in the Suez Canal. But the Bab el-Mandeb Strait is located in a far more precarious neighborhood. Right now in 2024, there are still ongoing violent civil wars raging all around the strait, in Yemen, Sudan, Somalia, and Ethiopia, that just over the last few years have likely resulted in the deaths of more than 1 million people, while Eritrea is ruled by a ruthless dictatorship that is often considered
war since 2018, and that's the toll in Ethiopia. Why the fuck I've never heard of this? This is from 1991. Even then, like million. Are you kidding me right now? Sudan civil war, just like last year, already it's like 12,000, like that. This one like surprised me. The Ethiopian one is like this, like for 5 or so years, right? It's like 650. That could be the number. Damn.
To be on the same scale of totalitarianism as North Korea. Djibouti alone exists as arguably an island of stability within this maelstrom of chaos. And that's why foreign countries from all around the world maintain significant military bases in the country to protect their own national interests. From China and Japan to the United States.
I still remember, what was there, like Olympics, right? Olympics, right? Where Djibouti basically like oiled up and all that, like represents it like that, right? Rather than saying something positive, they're like, who's the like the commenters, right? Oh, the Djibouti, look at that, beautiful culture. This is but troubled nation. It just like start to like depress the shit out of everything. It's like, man, come on, like you said positive shit about every other country, like talk about this as well. Come on, but start to just like bring on all the like war news and everything during the Olympics commentary. Like, come on.
States, France, and Italy, and probably shortly Saudi Arabia as well, while the United Arab Emirates maintains another base nearby in the self-declared state of Somaliland. And Russia is attempting to acquire a former United Arab Emirates military base in Eritrea, here at Assab, directly adjacent to the strait. For years, the biggest threat that was facing shipping going through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait were the Somali pirates, who raided merchant vessels mostly for money, hostages, and ransoms in the Gulf of Aden and in the Arabian Sea. A problem that lasted well into the 2010s until it finally began dying down after 2017, as maritime patrols from the American, UK, French, Russian, Chinese, and other international navies began conducting better patrols and better escort missions of merchant shipping through the region that dissuaded the pirates from launching any further attacks that could disrupt the global economy. But now, the Houthis in Yemen are the ones launching dozens of attacks on this critical global trade artery, and it's already been severely affecting the worldwide economy. The Houthi movement, which is officially known as Ansar Allah, which translates to Defenders of God, arose out of Yemen's Zayidi Shia Muslim community, who make up about 1/4 of Yemen's overall population, and are native to the hills and mountains of Yemen's northwest, immediately opposite of Saudi Arabia's own largely Shia Muslim community, immediately across the border.
This is where the whole Middle Eastern thing is like really effed up, right? Because most of the Islamic countries are in the Middle East and have that kind of turbulent issues, right? And because of how their Islamic religion is, like everybody's gonna act as like, basically they're the same one, right? Like he's a God's mission. So whatever is happening with Gaza, they're like, it might as well be happening to us, and basically doing that. Now every country is turbulent. every Islamic country is turbulent in that way. Very few are like rich and powerful enough to not be. So whenever things like this happen, like every turbulence will increase everywhere else, right? Because everywhere else will basically see this as a issue in that way, like attack on their god or something. Basically like is that like we're God's defenders or whatever. So this is why like turbulence always rises up in Middle East, I guess. Very few countries like Saudi Arabia, what is like UAE, and these are like kind of rich. So slowly countries are getting richer. That's the thing, like the more countries become prosperous and richer, there's a good chance like turbulence will go down, right? Friction will go down, I guess.
Formed with militant opposition to the United States, Israel, and the Saudi monarchy's influence in the Middle East in mind, the Houthis sought closer relations with Iran, while their official motto and flag have never left any doubt as to where they stand politically and ideologically. It reads from line to line, translated into English, as "God is the greatest, death to America, death to Israel, a curse upon the Jews, victory to Islam."
Okay, okay. I'm just wondering. Wait a minute. Yeah. So this two lines has been added in the current events. Otherwise, this is like basically everyday thing for past multiple decades, right?
A decade ago in 2014, during the midst of the Arab
added
Spring
the
revolts
Israel
that were
Jews thing
sweeping all
for the
across the
current
Middle
events.
East, the Houthis managed to organize themselves with support and funding from Iran, and stormed out from their hills to capture the Yemeni capital from the Yemeni government, Sana'a. From there, the Houthis managed to expand their territorial control even further across northwestern Yemen, while the president of Yemen at the time fled the country towards Saudi Arabia. At his own request for a foreign intervention to restore his own authority and crush the Houthi rebellion, Saudi Arabia decided to militarily intervene in Yemen's civil war beginning in 2015. The Saudis, along with many other Arab states, all supplied with arms and finances from the United States, then launched Operation Decisive Storm into Yemen. The Saudis were terrified that if the Shia Houthis were victorious in Yemen, they could exploit their geographic position to blockade the Bab el-Mandeb Strait in unison with their Shia supporter Iran's ability.
Wait a minute. I was just saying about like Saudi Arabia, UAE, like there are some rich countries, but even then, like there are two versions of Islamic, religions, and like Shia and there are two, right? One is Shia, and other I forgot the name. Sunni, Shia and Sunni, right? So even that divides the religion. So like, what is Saudi Arabia? What is UAE? Like, which are they? Shia? Are they Sunni? Because if they're like any other, like not all basically will respond the same way. Like something happened with the Sunni. I'm guessing Sunnis are more compared to Shia, or Shia are more compared to Sunni. I'm pretty sure like there's one is like really bigger compared to the other in just size. But if something happens with Sunni, Shia ones are not going to do anything about it. That's the thing, right? So I don't know.
To blockade the Strait of Hormuz, a situation that would immediately crash Saudi Arabia's entire economy. That's overwhelmingly reliant on exporting their crude oil to customers in Asia. If both choke points were shut down, the Saudis would be forced into a situation where they could only continue selling their oil to their biggest customers by exporting their oil the long way to the north through the Suez Canal and then all the way around Africa, which would make their oil significantly more expensive for Asian consumers to buy and would make Saudi oil far less competitive,
look at that.
Which would mean that they would sell a lot less of their oil, and Saudi Arabia's finances and government would each become devastated.
That is not
so
happening.
The Saudis wanted to crush the Houthis and restore the authority of the friendly Yemeni government before that could ever happen, as did the United States and all the other Arab states opposed to Iran. Over the next few years, the Saudi-led air campaign would drop around 25,000 airstrikes all across Houthi-controlled territory in Yemen that's estimated to have killed more than 19
leader Operation Decisive Storm, whose leader was Saudi Arabia because they were the one leading it. Direct coalition partners like UAE and like Dubai and everybody's like, yeah, we'll be here. Sudan. Logistical support, financial arm, also US and everybody just like basically European countries like, okay, we're not there, but we'll just like give you all the equipment and thing. We'll provide logistics from here, basically all the paperwork and shit. I don't know. So basically, all these countries were doing this.
1,000 civilians, while the Saudi-led coalition navy initiated a maritime blockade of the Houthi-controlled
Obviously,
coastline.
They changed few days ago when
intervention ultimately produced an apocalypse in Yemen, with the UN saying as recently as 2023 that the situation within Yemen remained the worst ongoing humanitarian crisis in the world. with more than 380,000 total deaths in the country happening since the civil war began in 2014, resulting from violence, famine, and disease all attributable to the war. But the Houthis, continually funded and armed by Iran, continued hanging on to power in the territory they controlled. They resisted the Saudis and the coalition, and even began firing missiles and drones into Saudi and UAE population centers in retaliation that killed hundreds of Saudi citizens.
See, that's the problem. When you have a state or a government that is powered by a religion, let's just say, every religion around the world basically has this issue which is based on belief, because that's how religion works, right? Now, when things like this is happening, all these deaths and things, I'm pretty sure all the it's 80-90% of them probably can't even afford food, right? Basically malnourished. A lot of people might have issues just for simple water and food. I see a lot of sometimes this charity ad which basically talks about Yemen and things. Now, any entity, let's just say government or whatever, governing body of that area, basically sees this maybe whatever we're doing right now is not working, because doesn't matter what our goal is, our own people are getting screwed, so what's the point? But if you're powered by religion, you'll just basically God will do everything good in the end, so let's just keep going type of way, which will only end up becoming even worse and worse until your country either is no longer existing, or most people basically leave, or just even worse. I don't know. So yeah, I'm pretty sure I saw an ad about where there's 70 or 80% of people are below poverty line and things like that. That's just fucked up.
When Donald Trump assumed the American presidency in 2017, he chose to dramatically expand Washington's support for the Saudi war effort in Yemen, as a part of his overall policy of maximum pressure applied on Iran and its proxy forces across the Middle East, adding the Houthis to America's list of designated terrorist organizations, and authorizing a deal for more than $27 billion worth of additional U.S. arms sales to Saudi Arabia, including fighter jets and precision-guided bombs, all meant to be used in Yemen against the Houthis. But as the intervention in Yemen became increasingly bloody, America's continued support of the Saudi war effort there became increasingly politically controversial in Washington, and increasingly linked to Donald Trump personally. Joe Biden vowed that after assuming the presidency in 2021, he would completely reverse Trump's course in Yemen and end all of America's involvement in the country, which culminated quickly with Biden's declaration in February of 2021 that the United
Oh my god. So everybody's gonna get pissed off at Biden now. You're the reason why this thing increased. If we were still there, putting pressure on Houthis, they wouldn't have done this type of way. Understand, their mentality, okay, whatever our goal is, their condition in Yemen is really worse, and we are adding to it. And a free democratic country, basically seeing that, people will be pissed off. Why are we there? Why are we creating even more deaths and more issues there, right? So obviously, the goal is there to stabilize the region, basically making sure Houthis don't create even more issues. But in order to do that, they have to attack Yemen. Houthis don't care how much damage happens in Yemen. They're gonna keep going, basically. US trying to doing this, even increase even more death and damage. American people see that it's what the fuck. So Biden's okay, we're gonna reverse it. But then again, it's just probably gonna reverse everything you've done in the past, trying to stabilize the region. Now Houthis with power by Iran is gonna be even more stronger, which kind of did happen. So now people are gonna blame Biden, you should have been stronger, this and that. Next time, I don't know.
United States would be halting all of its support for Saudi Arabia and Yemen, and that the Houthis would be removed from America's list of designated terror organizations. This abrupt end of America's support for the war in Yemen under Biden.
Okay, I don't get that part. Okay, you don't want to do that, you want to pull away from that, great, but you don't have to remove them from terrorists. Is there a law that if you add somebody as terrorist, official terrorist in your US government, you have to take action? Then I can understand, for technicality, they would remove them, but yeah.
Fact that the Saudis had blown through an estimated $265 billion before then, just on arms trying and failing to destroy the Houthis, kind of forced the Saudis' hand into beginning to search for an exit strategy from their war in Yemen. A ceasefire agreement between the Houthis and the Saudi-backed Yemeni government was agreed upon in April of 2022. That's generally held ever since, with only minor flare-ups of violence as the Saudis and Houthis have continued on negotiations, trying to find a final peace settlement. This relative calm in Yemen ever since the April 2022 ceasefire has given the Houthis time to consolidate their control over the area they rule in northwestern Yemen, an area that represents only about a quarter of Yemen's total territory, but more than 2/3 of Yemen's total population, or about 24 million people, and Yemen's capital city. The Houthis therefore control more of what makes Yemen Yemen than the internationally recognized Yemeni government that's backed by Saudi Arabia does. And the relative peace for the past 2 years during the ceasefire has likely enabled them to covertly import huge volumes of additional missiles and drones from Iran. And so now, with the massive ongoing war between Israel and Hamas having exploded in Gaza, Iran has been seeking ways to assist Hamas by steadily increasing the pressure being applied on Israel without directly attacking them and starting an all-out war. And perhaps the best way that Iran has been able to do this has been by nudging the Houthis to begin launching their attacks on merchant shipping across the Red Sea. You see, as the Houthi missile and drone attacks on dozens of merchant ships in the Red Sea began really accelerating in December of 2023 and became increasingly indiscriminate after the Galaxy Leader hijacking incident, the wartime risk insurance premiums that maritime insurance companies charge.
See, that's the thing. Like, okay, I understand like people's point of view, Biden's point of view. Like, in Yemen we created too much damage. While we're still creating damage, I'm guessing that's what their mentality was. But by pulling out, now you're gonna answer with even more damage than you would have done if you never pulled out. Basically, if you were still there trying to stabilize the region, this wouldn't have happened. So I guess like there are times where like certain like authority figure like president or like a Congress or basically like generals or whatever, like committee, the National Defense Committee, has to like have a long vision with experience to basically make hard decision. So things like this doesn't happen, right? So I don't know, like US pulled out of Afghanistan. Obviously everybody wanted that. I'm guessing that was bipartisan thing, but that made like that organization basically take over. Now right now I don't, there is no much of an issue, but what if like few years from now that will cause major issues which can link back to that. Now this thing you can already see, like, okay, pulling back is an issue basically. Now you say like, okay, it's not our problem, but it is becoming your problem, right? You are right now there trying to attack it. Now who knows how long that will drag out and how costly that will turn out otherwise if you never pulled out. I don't know.
For all ships sailing through the Red Sea began to skyrocket. Major shipping companies from all around the world then faced with these rapidly increasing insurance premiums to cover their ships and cargoes operating in the Red Sea, and the accompanying legitimate risks of seeing their expensive ships and their cargoes getting damaged or sunk, or their crew members getting killed, quickly began making announcements one after the other that they would begin suspending all of their maritime operations through the Red Sea and the Suez Canal until further notice. These announcements have by now come from most of the world's most significant container shipping companies like Maersk, MSC, Evergreen, CMA, CGM, Hapag-Lloyd, and COSCO, which together represent more than 95% of all the container volume that usually travels through the Suez Canal. In addition, many major oil and gas companies have also announced their indefinite suspensions of sending oil and gas tankers through the Red Sea or the Suez Canal, including BP and the Norwegian state-owned oil company Equinor. As a result, the world is now facing a third Suez crisis after the 1967 and 1975 one, and after the 2021
so basically,
one. Just by the
why is it not pausing? Basically, petrol and diesel prices will go up. I'm guessing because they are not going to go through it. They're going to take bigger road, and that's going to add to it. I'm guessing.
The end of December in 2023, more than 300 container ships and many more tankers, car carriers, and other merchant vessels had already decided to divert away from the Red Sea and the Suez Canal and travel the much longer way around Africa. A route that adds, on average, 7 to 10 days more travel time for ships plying the trade route between Asia and Europe, and in many cases significantly longer. Because this route is a much longer distance, the ships that travel it have to consume more fuel, while the crews that operate them must be rotated out more frequently and have to be paid longer hours, which contributes to the Cape of Good Hope route usually being about 15% more expensive to take when compared with the shorter Red Sea and Suez Canal route. even after considering the tolls
So there will be 15% hike in diesel and petrol prices, I'm guessing.
and fees that Egypt charges. That means that with more and more ships diverting around the Red Sea, those 15% higher average shipping costs are going to be gradually getting passed on to consumers, which, if it continues getting worse and persists, will steadily begin piling on inflationary pressures on just about every product all around the world. And even worse, the extended length of time that these ships are going to have to spend out on the ocean traveling the longer routes between Europe and Asia is expected to absorb around 20% of the entire global merchant fleet's capacity, which, of course, is just going to lead to even more shipping delays and even higher costs and a worldwide cascading avalanche of inflation for pretty much every single product you can think of the longer the Red Sea route remains closed for. And there are many secondary, less thought of issues that can eventually spiral out of control the longer the Red Sea is shut down to international shipping for like this. In a sense, the Houthi attacks shutting down the Red Sea have hurt his.
Alright, you know what? I'm gonna stop here. I think I understand the point he's making here, but this like his comment said like this video was made before US UK began initiating airstrikes. So I'm guessing like US UK basically like, okay, we're not having the 15% any means necessary, right? So they're just point blank launching an attack, trying to make sure like at least like route become like stable enough that they can be used or something like that. I don't know. So yeah, shutting off that canal is not going to be option, especially in today, right? Because post COVID, like every country is like basically tethering, right? It's like very thin line, trying to avoid like recession very very carefully. And since every economy is tied to global economy, everybody's trying to like do that. Because few countries here and there like collapses, every other country is going to feel it, and basically recession will be global wide. See, basically if recession happened this time, it will be like COVID. Like COVID was like a proper global pandemic, while other ones like there were not, like MERS and things. It was like only in Middle East, and other ones basically like way back in World War One. They that influenza one, that was the global scale, but that was because of the war, point blank war. There was no war during COVID time, but global economy was properly global for first time ever in past 10 decades. The whole global economy has become global, where everybody's reliant on each other, everybody travels all the time, right? If some kind of a virus basically like somebody discovers it, there's a high chance half of the countries in the world already have it. That's how fast people travel nowadays. So recession is also like similar. Like if recession starts somewhere, let's just say US is like, oh fuck me, we're in recession. US is like a strong example, because if recession happen in US, everybody's screwed. Everything's basically tied to dollar in a way. But even like decent enough economies like UK or something, even in India, like recession happens, every world will feel it. So this could trigger that, right? It's like a ripple effect type of way. It will just like back up more and more. Things become expensive. That makes things more expensive. That thing makes more expensive. It will just be like weird effect. Obviously, like smart statistical people, right, knows how to like counter that. But even then, they need something to counter that, right? If something like this is happening, they can't do it. So yeah. Right, well, that was how Yemen is wrecking the entire global economy. By the channel RealLifeLore. If you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.